we have talked a lot about um, why you do what you do, but we haven't really talked much about what is that you do.
Hmm.
So I would love your journey from, you know, being an author of aligning the dots to the Blue Dot Partners, the your company. I would love the story. How did that come about? I mean, um, being working at Apple and then going starting your own firm. Um, it's I can't imagine. I think it's probably be hard thing to do, leaving corporate and doing all that. So how did all started?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, thank you for being on your show again. I'm an entrepreneur at heart. I like the transformation of idea to a business where people buy something and enjoy it, hopefully. Um, and I've been in Silicon Valley for 35 years. I arrived on January 4th, 1990, and I have been on 23 boards. I've been investing in companies. I've been sometimes successful, many times failed. But I've always struggled with a very simple question, which is what do I need to do on Monday morning at 8 o'clock to grow my business? And I think that top line revenue growth is the most vexing and difficult challenge that every CEO and every entrepreneur and every business leader is facing. And I was not happy with the way people were trying to solve that problem, which is typically kind of a knee-jerk reaction. Well, let's just have more salespeople. Let's just discount our product. Let's just build yet another feature that our competition has. I mean, while all those may sound like good idea, they rarely work because they are based on emotion. They are not based on data analysis. They are not based on a deep understanding of why is the company fundamentally not growing. And so that's how I came up with this idea of alignment. And it's really the alignment between the business and its target market that matters. That's the engine of growth. And just like a mechanical watch, if the gears are misaligned, the watch may still be working and ticking, but eventually it will slow down and eventually it will stop ticking. And so if you misalign your business with your target market, then you will slow down and you will eventually become irrelevant and the business may actually shut down. So it's all about alignment. That's really the secret, and that's the only way to grow a business, compared to your market in which you operate.
Um, Tell me more about that. For people who are not as understanding of these terms, people who are listening to it, I would love more thoughts on what exactly do you mean by alignment with the
Yeah, I
market.
mean, it's a great question. So the next step was I realized that there are, and that was a big discovery for me, by the way, but I realized that there are four universal axes of alignment, and they apply to literally any business. So you can take a small coffee place in Paris, you can take a medium-sized company in Miami or startup here in Silicon Valley or large corporation. Those four principles of alignment are exactly the same. They are truly universal. So the first one is that the pain of the customer and the claim that the business makes to address that pain have to be aligned. So if you come to me, Harry, with a headache, and I show you a stomachache pill, you can say, "Oh, wait a minute, I've got a headache, not a stomachache pill. So your pain and my claim are not aligned. You will never buy my pill, and nor should you buy my pill." The second axis of alignment is the way the claim is expressed, which is the messaging, and the way the claim is understood, which is the perception. Those two things must be aligned. So if I have the right pill for your headache and I tell you in French, voilà le médicament qu'il te faut qui soulèvera ton mal de tête en 10 minutes. Well, if you don't speak French, you're like, what the heck this guy just said? And you will not understand my claim because I am not speaking your language and you will never buy the pill, even though it would be the perfect pill for your headache. So that's the second axis. The third one is the way customers want to buy and the way the product is sold in the marketplace have to be aligned. So if I say, Harry, I have your pill, you have to fly here to the Bay Area to pick it up. You're like, well, wait a minute, the pharmacy is just down the street from where I live. Why can't I just go there and walk and pick up the medicine? And then the fourth axis of alignment is actually my favorite one, and I did steal it out of the Apple playbook. I realized that there is one and only one business on this planet. I realized that everybody is in the exact same unique business. And that unique business is the manufacturing and delivery of delight.
Yeah.
That's the business everybody is in, whether you like it or not. And so the fourth axis of alignment is the alignment between the expected delight and the offering. In other words, what's actually delivered to that customer, whether it's a product or a service. And those two things must be aligned. There cannot be an impedance mismatch between, oh, I expected that, and then I realize as I consume the product that it's different. So if you get the pill and then your headache is worse and you get dizzy, then obviously that's not what you expected. And you're not going to buy the product more. You're not going to advise other people to buy the product. So the four universal axes of alignment is that the pain of the customer and the claim that the business makes have to be aligned, that the perception, which is how the claim is understood, and the messaging, which is how the claim is expressed by the business, have to be aligned. And then the way the customers want to buy the product or the service and the way that product or service is sold in the marketplace have to be aligned. And then finally, that what is delivered to the customer and the expected delight have to be aligned. And if you perfectly align your business along those four axes, then you will realize the maximum growth rate possible within your target market.
Wow, that's awesome. I'm glad you said those terms, maximum growth rate possible within your target market.
Mhm.
Um, let's talk about all these in depth. I think from pain to perception to perspective, to delight and to delivery. I want to know more depth on that. How can people or entrepreneurs or leaders apply that practically on any level?
Well, the first thing they need to do is they need to define what those are, right? So I use so let's take the pain and the claim, for example, just to double click on this. I used to ask entrepreneur and CEOs when I met them at a party, let's say, I said, well, what does your company do? And then what I realized is very quickly they dive into a lot of details of what the company does and their product. And they're like, well, let me stop you. I am not going to buy your, 10 gigabit Ethernet switch for security. It's like, I'm not your prospect. So I decided to now, I never ask that question again. The question I ask is, well, just tell me in one sentence. Don't tell me what you do, but tell me in one sentence, why should I buy your product? And it's a very difficult question sometimes for them to answer, which tells me that they haven't really aligned the pain and the claim. They don't know what the pain is and they don't know what the claim is. And therefore they describe to me the what they do, maybe how they do it, but they're not telling me the why I should buy. Um, the messaging and the perception is very similar. Sometimes they express something to you and then you go on the website and you're like, well, is this even the same company? It's completely disconnected between what the CEO told me and what I read. Sometimes they don't use the language of their prospects. Sometimes they use lingo that we are so proud of in Silicon Valley. It's like, what does that mean? I don't understand. And then the next one is purchase versus sale. What friction is introduced through that process? Why are you making me go through hoops to buy your product once I decided I want to acquire it? Why do I have why those terms and conditions in your agreement? I don't want them. If I'm the procurement of a government buying a product, I'm buying in a very particular way because that's the rule. It's like you have to comply. And then the last one is the misalignment between the expected delight and what is delivered. And the interesting thing is, it's a lot easier to control the expected delight than it is to change your product. So ask yourself, is like, what delight should my customers expect? And how do I communicate that to them very clearly? And so that when actually they use the product, that expectation is fully met. And a lot of companies fail to define what the expected delight should be. And because of that, then there's a misalignment, and then they're not growing as fast as they can.
What was what was the alignment in all four of these steps for you and Blue Dot Partners?
Well, so Blue Dots is very simple. The pain is that I am not growing as fast as I would like. And there's many consequences of that. And consequently, my board isn't happy, my employees are not happy, my investors are not happy. I'm not creating shareholder value. I'm losing market share. So there's a real consequence to that pain. And the claim we make is I will help you grow faster. I mean, very simple. It's fully aligned. The way we message is that we help you grow faster, and we do that in a unique way. And we're very different from a lot of other consulting companies or management consulting companies because we have this unique data-driven approach of four alignments, and we measure those alignments, so on and so forth. When they want to buy from us, it's very easy. We have a standard consulting agreement. There's nothing tricky about it. And then we want to delight them. So when we deliver the growth playbook, which is really the product that they buy from us, it's a very detailed operating plan that tells them what to do on Monday morning at 8 o'clock to grow. They're always surprised because it's very data driven, a lot of analysis, and it's a very prescriptive playbook, and they know exactly what to do. And that's how we maximize that alignment between the expected delight and what we actually deliver. And of course, it works because not because we're smart, but because it's common sense. If you start to align, you're going to start to grow, and people will buy, customers will buy more. And so
Yeah.
that's how we realize those four alignments. Quite simple in many ways.
Yeah. What would you say that some of the things and challenges that you went through while um, starting Blue Dots and scaling Blue Dots? A lot of times people come on my show and they don't like to talk about the bad. At Vision Pros Live, I think we get excited about the good, bad, and the ugly,
Mm-hmm.
where the entrepreneurs can see, hey, this is exactly what the leader went through to get to this level.
Yeah.
It's not all hunky dory. It's not all amazing. I love your thoughts on that.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think the biggest challenge for us is to recruit the right partners. And to us, a right partner is somebody who has been a real CEO before. Because it's very hard to give parenting advice and to lecture somebody about parenting when you never have any when you never had any kids. Right? If you don't know how to change a diaper and getting up in the middle of the night and then chauffeuring your kid to the baseball, practice and 3 times a week and then dealing with the teenager years, what they don't want to talk to you and so on and so forth. I think it's really hard. And so we have a principle which is if you want to be a partner at Blue Dots, you must have been a real CEO of a real business before. But then at the same time, you must be good at management consulting. So if you take a pure CEO who loves to drive and have team and give orders, who's never done management consulting, that doesn't work for us. And then conversely, if we take somebody from Bain or McKinsey or BCG who spend their whole life consulting, they've never been a CEO. They don't know what it means. And so our biggest challenge is to find the right people who can really get involved with our clients and really have a high level of empathy and at the same time a disciplined approach to management consulting. And that's really hard. And that's the reason we are not growing as fast as we could. Now, I don't have to grow. We don't have to grow because we never raised any money. We don't have a board. We don't have investors. I only have one boss with my wife, and I don't have to worry about anything else. But companies who raise money or have a board, they have to grow. They have no choice. And so they are subject to that law, which we're not.
Awesome.
Oh,
Thank you.
sorry, one more thing I want to add. I think when you talk about growth, there's a really important concept, which is to grow responsibly. Like,
Yes.
how can a company reasonably grow within a market that has its own growth rate and rhythm? And I always say, growing a business is like drinking wine. You have to do it responsibly. And part of the issue we have in Silicon Valley is we tend to put a lot of money into companies and like, well, you need to grow at 100% a year for 10 years. It's like, I just gave you $40 million. How come you're not growing? And we're forcing a growth that is sometimes unhealthy and that is just not the right rhythm for the company. And then we're actually destroying value instead of creating value.
So how can a company, an entrepreneur or leader avoid that?
They have to avoid that by understanding the growth rate of the business they're in. How much is my market growing at? And then how much more growth can I reasonably deliver? So, for example, if you're in a market that's growing at 15% a year, you're not going to grow at 150% a year, right? So you want to beat the market for sure. But if you grow at 22, 25%, then I think that's a reasonable growth rate. And sometimes you don't, if the market is decreasing and at minus 30% a year, if you're negatively growing at minus 5%, you're actually gaining market share. That's actually a good thing. And you may become a leader in a whole market that's going down, but because you're taking more and more market share, then you're going to become a leader and you're actually creating value as well. So it's really in relation to the growth of the market in which you operate. That's what's important.
Yes. Um, what would you say? What books or resources would you recommend
Well, I
for?
mean, of course, of course, the only book they need to read is Aligning the Dots, right? But I actually, it's interesting. I wrote a business book, but I actually do not read a lot of business books. And the reason is that a lot of business books have a lot of pages, and there's only maybe 5 pages that are really teaching me something. So in fact, when in the book, I have a section that says how to read this book, and I say, how much time do you have? 1 minute, 3 minutes, 10 minutes, or half an hour, or forever. And then I actually tell them what to read depending on the time that the reader has. And so I think, I think my advice is, read a few books when you very quickly are connecting to the books. If you are interested in and you're learning, then keep reading. If you don't feel that connection very quickly, just don't read the book. And instead meet other CEOs, meet investors, meet board members. And I think, that can also bring a lot of lights to your learning experience and to growing and to becoming a better entrepreneur or better business leader.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Um, my question, there's still one unanswered question from our talk, is how did you become an author? That's yeah, like I understand what problem you were trying to solve, but why the book?
Well, I think it's a great question. I think, and I advise a lot of people who come to me and say, well, I want to write a book. What advice do you have? And I always give the same answer. I said, the best advice I can give you is really ask yourself fundamentally, why do you want to write a book?
Mm,
If the answer is, well, I want to make millions of dollars because I'm going to sell 50 million copies, I typically tell them, well, forget it. That's just not the way it works. Now, you may be lucky and you may be exceptional, but that certainly wasn't me. Um, if they say, "Well, I want to flatter my ego and just say I'm an author," then okay. I mean, I think that's not an invalid answer, but it's like I don't think that's going to really fulfill their dreams. The reason I wrote the book is because we have this very unique approach to solving a very difficult problem, which is the problem of growth, and we do it through those 4 axes of alignment and measurement and data. And I wanted to tell that story. I didn't want. I've been on 23 boards. I didn't want people to struggle with, well, we don't really understand why we're not growing. Now they know it's because they are misaligned, and by reading the book and by diving into how we do things, they know exactly what they are misaligned, and they can start to correct those misalignments. So I wrote the book, I gave the TED talk because I wanted to evangelize this idea. I wanted to share this concept, and hopefully people will use it and start to think about their business differently. And if they do, then that was my definition of success in terms of writing a book. It's not how many copies I sold, because I don't really care. And I give a lot of free copies to people and just say, hey, if you can't sleep at night, take my book and read it, and that will help you. And hopefully people will find, one or two things in the book that is like, oh, now I have a new idea, I have a new concept, or now I understand. And if they do that, then I'm thrilled and I'm very, very happy.
thank you for sharing that. I have one last question for you, Philip, before we
Mhm.
end today's segment. What held you back during your career?
I think it's lack of confidence at the beginning of my career, fear. Um, I think fear is a big factor in holding people up. And I was very successful in working with Steve Jobs directly because I had no fear. And I told him many times, I said, Steve, this is my idea. This is what I think. Here is the reason. And you may think I'm the stupidest guy on the planet. Doesn't affect me. I don't really care. And you can fire me this afternoon. I don't really care because I'm sure I'll find something else somewhere. It's like, I'm not worried about that. And that created a very healthy relationship where he knew that I would not, try to kiss his feet or please him or flatter his ego, and many times he didn't like my ideas and he thought it was stupid, and that was fine. It's like, I'm okay with that. Um, and many times he thought it was stupid, and then 3 weeks later he would actually implement them and do it, which is fine as well. So I think, I think it's what holds people is fear of understanding who they are truly, pretending to be somebody they are not. I think that's a big problem. And also fear of building relationships and connections without having to ask for anything. Just authentic, healthy relationship where you start the dialogue by, how can I help you? Is there anything I can do to help you? As opposed to buy my product and pay me quickly. And if people don't understand, and this is the advice I give to young people, said build your network, an authentic network. I have a relationship with people that I've had for 35 years since I came here. And that has always been paying big dividends for me and always helped me. So don't hesitate to engage with people you don't know. Listen to their story. Everybody has a story. It's always interesting, at least to me, It's like, well, what's your background? Where were you born, and which country do you come from, and why did you start this company? The kinds of question you're asking, I think that's really important, and to listen to the story, and travel, and look at the world, and everything is different from the way you think, and that's how you get better, and that's how you learn.
Thank you for being here today. I'm really happy that you tuned in to Vision Pros Live. I'm looking forward to seeing your reactions as these episodes continue to move forward. This is going to get more and more fun. We'll have more and more engagement as well. We'll invite people to participate in the show. And thank you for giving us your time and attention. Have an excellent time building out your vision and becoming a vision pro yourself.